this is a workshop. So in this workshop, we really want you to ask questions. There's no time. We will have different places within this presentation or this workshop to have for questions if you didn't ask. But otherwise, we want this open, and I hope you got the email I sent earlier last week, giving you kind of an idea of, we want this to be an engaging workshop where you ask questions. Our first half will be kind of general to those who may be new or need a review of the sales FCSUA community, and then we'll get a little more deeper in the afternoon part with the grant. So you have our today's agenda and the handout for this, where you can follow along, will be posted in the chat room in a few minutes. We're trying to make sure that we got as many people who intend on joining us being here so that they won't miss that handout. But we're getting that ready, and we'll put that in the chat in just a few minutes. But we will take a look at the FCSUA community and talk about access. If you haven't gone in there, or if you have, and the licenses that we have available for that. We will go over key features. And again, this first half is really a good review and an opportunity for you to ask questions if you haven't been in here or you were in here and forgot how to do it. We will go over, look at each one of the tabs in the FCSUA homepage, kind of look through the application. This morning, we'll spend more time looking through the application, the actual scholarships, and the annual reports. And in the afternoon, we'll save that for grants. Okay, we got 1 minute in, Cody. Okay. With the FCSUA community, we want to remind you that to access the portal, you actually have 2 licenses. And that's the primary contact responsible for completing components within the FCSUA community, program information and other information. And then there's obviously probably going to be someone else. And you can have 1 other staff member. So you need to think about that in accessing the portal. Beginning February 2022, we're actually going to have a multi-factor authentication process. And we've certainly become familiar with that in order to protect intruders from entering our environment. So if you are currently using someone's credentials to log in, it's going to be pretty hard to do that after February 22nd. And so we want the folks who should be in the FCSUA community in there and let us know who needs a unique license. We now are in a position to issue 2 licenses to each institution. And if there's need for a 3rd one, let us know. We will, prior to February 22nd, or maybe immediately after, but we will do a brief. We will work with the team leads again of each institution and walk you through the multi-factor authentication to make sure that there's no hiccup in whatever you're trying to do.
Right, and it's nothing different from what we might all be used to already. When you're trying to access your bank account and you have another application that gives you a code, and that's your 2nd level, that's your multi-factor authentication level. So we'll go over the details. It's very easy to set up. This is something that Salesforce is adding to protect the data that we're saving in the platform. So we are definitely taking advantage of that. It is going to be required. That's why we have the deadline for February 2022 to get it done. But we're definitely going to make sure that everyone can access their accounts and the FCSUA community after we put this requirement in place.
So think about that, and think about if you are currently sharing credentials, how you will make sure that at least 2 people have separate licenses now. And if for some reason you need a 3rd license, you can let us know that now, and we can take care of that for you. So please let us know that. I see there's a comment in the chat. I'm not sure if it's a if there's a question.
Someone, I think it's hard to call. It's looking
Okay.
yeah.
So Claudia will work with that. So one of the things, if it is, has the handout been posted in the chat yet? We can go ahead and we will get the handout posted in the chat, because one of the things we will do is we're going to go to the FCSUA community, and we want you to have the handout as something for you to follow along. So if you haven't already logged in on your computer to the FCSUA community, go ahead and do that now so that you can ask questions. You can follow along, and we have a sample webinar that we're putting up, a sample member that we're putting up, but we want you to ask questions as we go along. And so as you see, we're going to take it down and we will be in the community from this point. Do we have the handout in there yet? So I'm going to open up the community, make that, everybody should be seeing the community at this point. With this transition, I will need to transition as well, because I need to see. I need to see what I know. And so as we take a look at that, we are currently on the home page. So we are on the home page, and all of you, if you're logged in right now, you should be able to see that as well, that we're in the home page. And so in the home page, we have the, oops, sorry. My mouse is very, very sensitive. So back it up a little bit. Size. Is that still okay? So if it does it again, screen. So in the home page, you'll see that we have the institutional profile. So all of your home pages should look like this in the FCSUA community. We have the institutional profile. This is a critical important place to start, because in the institutional profile, you've heard us mention probably 900,000 times, please update your contacts here. And you'll see that we have some interesting characters in our contact list. All of the individuals who are in the community does not mean that they need to have a license, but they're your contacts. We use that information for a variety of things. And so having the correct email is important. Having the important role, that's important to us, because as we send out communication via Salesforce, we use that contact information to make sure to inform you of whatever is happening. So you should get, if you have not updated your institution information, you will get a red flag, and it will tell you to please update your FCSUA contacts immediately.
And I think it's not only for communication, but also depending on the stage that program is, if it's an institution that wants to they start to work on their application, they're going to see that certain roles are required for them to start working on their application. For example, that would be primary point of contact and the institution president. If they're going to work on the grants, we have certain roles related to the grant. So until you have those roles in place, or those contacts with those roles assigned in place, you're not going to be able to work on your grant proposal, because all the notifications and status that change that go through the process are gonna get to those contacts through email. And if we don't have them, there's not going to be possible. Same for when you see all the reminders that we always talk about. That's why it's key to have that my institution contacts list that you're seeing in your screen up to date.
So make sure that's done. Yeah, thank you. Okay. I see some information in the chat?
Yeah, we now have the handouts.
Okay, great.
As a PDF, so everyone can know.
So you can get that, and we're on slide 3, and we're just gonna move through again on Salesforce, on FCSUA Community, and talk through. So that's a way for you to take notes or let us know if you have any questions. So then the next feature in the community is the Fpctp Applications. And this is for those programs that whoever's here, if you haven't started an application, this is where you would start. And you'll see right now, we have examples of what we see, or what you might, our particular team sees, is that we have a draft status and we have a final approval status. And we could look at what each one of those might look like. But this is where your applications are. I know as we talk with you, particularly during the Institute, we'll talk about a couple of excuse me, different environments. And some of you might get confused about which is which. This is the application. So let's go into, you'll notice that on the application that's a draft, that everything is available to look at. One of the things that we've mentioned before I click into it is that in previous workshops is that you see this icon that looks like an eye. That is if you just want to view what's in there. When you only want to view what's in here, you do not have the ability to make any edits. So you may see information, I'm trying to click into one of the sections to make some changes. I can't do that. And so we noticed that when we started and made that transition last year to applications being in here, that if you clicked on the icon, a lot of times we got an email, the eye icon under action, we got emails saying, I can't do anything, I can't see it. So
Right,
if you are in there and you want to make edits, then you have to click on that pencil. And you'll find that to be true for every one of the components in the FCSUA community, that pencil lets you edit. Now I can go into the application and I can edit. If you notice, I'm on the name, I'm down on number 2, and the cursor is blinking and is active. I remove the R and I put the R back. Now I can edit. But in this, let's go through some of the information that we need to take a look at. I think I missed something about first time login. Is there something critical before we do that?
Yeah, and that
Okay.
actually relates back to the roles as we
Okay.
were talking about. So you're
Okay.
gonna see on the slides that if, let's say that is the first time that an institution is going to into the FCSUA community, they're gonna start working on their application. So when they log in, we only are going to request you to provide the information related to the primary point of contact. So we assign the license to that person. But as we said, the institution president, the superintendent, dependent of the type of institution, is key through the process. So we need that role to be assigned.
Yes.
So if it's the first time that you're going in there, your screen is just gonna look a little bit different. So you're gonna be directed immediately to the institutional profile to complete and to enter the role. So that's the difference.
Yes.
Versus when you already are an established account, so you can go and navigate through all the components because your roles are already established.
Okay, cool, thank you. I see there's something in the chat. So that part, we want to make sure if you go in your first time login, you need to take care of your contacts. Okay, so we're in the draft application at this time, and for programs that are new, and we currently have a program who has an application in, and we are ready to review it. You will get information in here, and each time you go in, if you're not ready for us to review it, we will always go in and make comments. We'll take a look at your information, go in and make comments. But I want to just talk about the application process for a little bit, talk about it and the process and walk through any components that might not be clear to you. So we know if you're not an approved program, that the first step is with us. And so this is where the application is housed. And we look at the application, provide feedback, guide you until it is absolutely complete. Once it is complete with us, and we'll walk through some of the areas, once it is complete with us, then we send your application to the DOE, depending on whether or not you are a university, a state college, or community college, or a technical college. We send it to different entities at the DOE, whether it's the Florida, the BOG, Florida Board of Governors, or the Chancellor's Office for colleges, state colleges, or the Career and Technical Education Chancellor or Commissioner, Chancellor, sorry, an Executive Director for the technical colleges. So we try to make sure that we get your application to the right division within the DOE to approve it. Once they approve it, then we send a message back in FCSUA that your application has been approved, and we send it to your president or your superintendent and congratulate you on everything else. One thing I want to keep in mind, help you keep in mind, is that once your application, while you're working on your application, at the same time, the grants part that we'll go over this afternoon, you'll be able to do that at the same time. For some, that's a little mind-boggling, but one of the things we like to do is we like to inform your president and or your superintendent at the exact same time that your program has been approved and that your grant has been approved. That is particularly important for some of our programs who will go through renewal this year. So we have about 5 programs who are up for renewal this year, and your grant is also up for continuing. And if you are in that situation, we want you working on your application and your grant renewal continuing proposal so that we can do the same process. As you submit your application, once we approve it at FCSUA and we send it to DOE, they have 15 days to respond, whether or not they approve your application or have questions. Typically, we've had them respond within 2 weeks, and when they respond, that's when you get it back. So once you get the approval from FCSUA, then it's off to DOE. Let's go through some components of the application. And we'll see if there's any questions. It looks like there's something in the chat room.
Just Ada saying thank you for sharing the slide.
Oh, okay, good. So as you see, we have an opportunity in the application to determine whether or not this is a new application or it is a renewal. You'll do that. Additionally, when you get into the application, if you must, this is new for you, you must click on the instructions first. And so if you don't click on the instructions, you won't be able to move forward. So this is one step that you want to make sure you do first. And then you will choose whether or not this is a new or renewal application. Your information, if you're a renewal, is probably already in the contact information is already in there, but it doesn't matter whether we have it there or not. It's important for you to always double check because things change.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we always said, and that's where if you're a new institution and you're going through the application process to be approved, the reason why we do the contacts and you go to the institutional profile first is that because those questions that you're seeing right now, question 3 and question 4, those actually calculate from your contact information for your institutional profile. So you don't have to enter that information. We already have it in the institutional profile, and the system is capable of bringing that information through your application. So there's nothing in the institutional profile. Those questions would be empty. So that's one of the reasons we also need that information. So they're both connected, so they populate to the application.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. And we've had to go back and forth depending on who was doing it to get that information in there. So that is section 1 of the application. Now we know there's several of you who did not do, if you're doing a renewal, there's several of you who did not do the initial application. If you need a copy of that, I think we have the PDF in the file for those who were not part of that application process. We can also send it to you, but it should be, and we'll show you where those documents are. It should be also in your record where you can find it. Let's go to section 2. So one of the things to look at, we got some cool features within the application. You can expand these boxes to as much space as you need. So you are not, don't feel like when you open up the box that that is the only space that you have. We have an example of a renewal application, and what that's pretty important. Each one of the applications have very similar information. As you see on your PowerPoint, we ask about recruitment, we ask about your scope and sequence of your curriculum. You have to define your satisfactory academic progress, what is half-time at your institution, who your partnerships are, and sustainability. All of the applications have that. The renewal, however, is a little different. As you can see in this one, it asks for program history. And so you've had 3 years. That's one key factor I forgot to mention, is that the initial application is 3 years, and after 3 years, it is 5 years. So you've had 3 years of history with your program, and maybe you've made changes throughout the 3 years, but now that was not evidence on that initial application. And you've collected data on your students, and you've learned some things. So when you get into the history component, what is the history that you learned? We want to know. Tell us about your program, because you're now asking for us to renew the program. So what is it that will be different, or whatever you've been doing is absolutely wonderful. We found some really interesting changes that will be for the benefit of our participants, our students in the programs, as you've renewed. So that's been pretty exciting. So with the exception of this 1A for applications, all the rest is the same in section 1. Okay. I'm going to close that if there are no questions. I know you're looking at the comments. Yeah, I do see something in there. So we're going to go to section 2. Now, section 2 is really important, and we are relying on, before you go into the application, that you really have been in the online strategic planning tool. You've been in the online strategic planning tool, and you've thought about how you're going to make your students, you thought about your assessment process, you thought about the evidence-based and promising practices that are used to actually carry out an inclusive post-secondary program. So we do not expect you to jump into the application first if you haven't gone into the online strategic plan. And that's, we've found to be very helpful when people have come in and start writing. How are you going to determine who your students are? And what are the ways in which you will recruit and actually assess and admit those students into your program? And so you want to give some thought about, and remember, we just have a sample up. So if you see anything that's crazy in there, it literally is just that information in there. So as you think about the students with intellectual disabilities, who are they? Who are you going to be recruiting? A lot of time, programs have a set number of, well, a number meaning age, because we know this is for all students who have exited post-secondary ed, but they think about the age range that they might consider, and then that impacts who they would recruit. Or they may think about all of the students who are 18 and over, and the opportunity for them to participate in their program. And that's proved to be very different by each institution. And so as you think about that, we know that for number 2, you have to go by the federal guidelines for who are eligible or who are determined to have intellectual disabilities. Your institution will make that decision, but we are following federal guidelines of what that is. And there's been a lot of conversation about that. Conversations have been about whether we use IQ, how do we make that determination? We are happy to talk with you through it, and remember that all of us are audited according to all of our actions. And so your institution has to identify what is it that will tell us that a student has an intellectual disability, and we are happy with it, whether it be their previous IP, whether it be their IPE with voc rehab, or current doctor statement, or previous history, or they told you themselves and you got evidence in writing to back it up. So we want to think about that. Additionally, when we look at students who enter your program, some of you have ways or a committee of people who you know will make a determination. So think about that. And for the FPCTPs, who would that be? And if you're using people in your institution who participate in the admission process for typical students, that probably is a good thing to do so that they can be aware and you can align your practices with what your institution does. Okay. So, and finally, admitting students, you're looking at characteristics. What we don't need at this point is all of your application. This is a process in which you're thinking through how will we, when I mean your application process, your admission process that you will share with the public on how students will get the information and the application that you will use in order for them to be admitted. We appreciate seeing those because we do also share that with DOE to see if that's consistent with everyone else. But sometimes those are not always developed, but you know the process in which you're going to do them. And as we look at each one of the areas, I think I was going to show for number 2, we wanted to see if there are any questions about that before I go into the next section.
You can post it in the chat or mute yourself.
Okay. So we'll go to section 3. Again, we would think that in the online strategic plan, you probably thought about how you will assess your students. We know that all of our programs use very different tools, but they certainly use a person-centered approach, and they describe how that will happen as they are working with each one of those. They have a committee of individuals who a lot of times include personnel already at the institution without having to have a segregated admissions group, but a group who understands the unique population with whom you're working. And so that is something that section 3 is really interested in, is how are you going to assess to make sure that students either before and when they enter your program that you have the right type of curriculum and the right type of setup that they're looking for in a post-secondary education program. And then not only that, how will you advise them into the pathways or the concentrations that you've identified as available? Just like any other institution, you know what you want to make available based on your catchment area or what your institution is known for. Then what ways will you advise students into entering those pathways and support them in the process? So you want to think about how you will structure your advisement process so that the students will be successful, that as they enter your program, they are clear about what you have to offer, they're clear about the type of support you have available, and that they are ready to move forward in an exciting way. So this assessment and advising section is critically important for you to keep in mind. Did I miss anything? Okay. Now, section 4 is where we spend most of our time. This is the baby of our babies, and this requires a lot of good thought. As you can see, we ask you about how many you think are available. We ask you about numbers a lot as you start thinking about how large you want your program. And one of the things that our state legislators have said back to us over and over again is, we look forward to the day that you ask for more scholarship funds to support more students. And so while we encourage programs to start small because you know what your institution is capable of, we look forward to those numbers increasing as your institution feels more comfortable with the way that you handle your program with, as it is integrated into your institution. So as we think about section 4, you have to think about the name of your program, you think about what you're going to offer, and you think about how much will we offer. And critically important in this section is where you might be housed. And so that means that you have had a conversation with someone in your institution in higher administration. You've talked with others in your institution about who's going to oversee the work that we do. Are we going to be within a department, within a school, under continuing ed, within student affairs? Where will we be? And because of that, as you think about and move through the rest of your program application, you have to think about how you're going to structure and offer everything. But you'll notice one of the things that we ask over and over again is to give us an idea of what this program is about. How long will it last? What's the major components of it? And what kind of setup it will be. Now we notice, I hope you can see that on number 6 in this case, we ask you, what type of setup will you have? And I hope you can see that pretty clearly. Can you see that pretty good? Okay. So that very first one is, you're going to design a program that is a uniform program that for every student who enters your program will come in that program, will finish that program in a specific length of time, and they will have no other options. So your institution has designed a program that has everything based on what you're capable of starting, and your institution has decided would be a good fit for individuals coming into this approved program at that time. And it's a one uniform program. And everything that's needed within that program is that. And so that is what number 1 is. That's what that first one is, that says it's a specific program that does not include multiple concentrations. So it's like as if you were coming into education, that's your, everybody who enters is education, and that is it. The second one is, well, you know, and we do have quite a few programs who offer that. The second one is, you have a specific program that where you have something unique for students as they enter your Fpctp first, and they may be in that unique situation with the program offerings for a semester or for a year or a term, depending on how your institution looks at it. And once you have gotten everyone within that semester, term, or year complete in that particular component of your program, then you have other options that you provide them. So you have designed it where you have a secure, uniform opportunity for everyone to come in, and they all enter at that point. And once they have completed those the offerings for that, then they can move out into 5, 6, 18 other offerings, if that is what your institution does. But you have a uniform set of opportunities at first, and then they can move out based on their performance within that first year. The third one, we know that we have in parentheses such as CTEs, but this doesn't mean it is unique to CTEs. This is a range. Students will enter, when they enter your Fpctp, they have different options to go into right away. That's because, like in section 3, you've done the assessment, you've done grade advisement, they know what the options are. Whether that's 3 or 20, they have, when they come in under your support and umbrella, they will be out and in those concentrations or tracks right away. We find this is more common with our CTEs, but it's certainly not unique to them. And so that's how you have to think about that. Any comments in the chat? Okay. And so when you think about your length of time, you have an opportunity to select what is that length of time? And we try to choose terms that we know that are familiar to technical colleges, our state colleges and our universities. So what is that? And we have had other, and if you have other, that's fine. We talk through what that is. But what is the length in which the program you are presenting to the community and potential students, how long it will last? So you would choose that. Trying to see if it's anything, hours, credit hours. We know that's real clear for some of you, and for others that may be a little vague, because depending on where you're housed in your institution. And then people struggle when we start thinking about auditing classes, and we get to another section to look at that, whether you call that credits or not. What I can't express more is that this conversation should have been a conversation that you have within your institution. And that's what's so important about the online strategic planning tool, is that you've gone through that and you presented all these components with others to think about, how do we want this to represent? Because you are thinking about when students complete your program, what will they exit with? What do they have in hand to recognize credits or program or concentration? You're building some type of credential that you want them to be that you want everyone in the institution who are involved with this program to be familiar with, and that will accept those opportunities. If your general credential that you decide you're going to offer is one that has different concentrations to it or credentials to it, you have a yes or a no, and when you do that, different information comes up. If you choose yes, you'll be able to add what those certifications are. What we've had is people start off with yes, and then we talk with them and they say, oh no, then that information is still left there and we have to go back and ask you to clean it up. So you can easily go back and say no, but if we see the data in there, we'll have to ask you to go clean it up. But you may have even if it's a program that everyone has a uniform program that they come in and they exit, and you have some certifications that you want everyone to exit with, this is where you click yes. Everyone will get that. This is what this is for. And so as we think about that, that's critically important. I want to go back to that number 6 again under here, as it look at the credentials that you offer. As we're working with programs, we are asking that you please have a credential that indicates something to employers that it means work, that the students have been prepared for work. And so we work with you on that. We know that all of our programs don't currently have that. As they go through renewals, we're asking for programs. So please think about what that language is that can indicate to employers that they have done some preparation for a vocation, for work, for a career or something, okay? If you are one where, in this case, the only reason why we're seeing concentrations is because number 2 is selected. I'm going to show you what number 1 looks like. When we go down here, you notice that concentrations have disappeared. When we go to option 3, you notice that we then ask you for a variety. So it depends on what you click, and I'm on number 6, if you can see that well, what will show up in asking you about other concentrations and tracks. If you don't have any other concentrations and tracks, it will not show up. And if you started off that way and you go back and click it again, the data will be there. So we have to ask. What happens is all of the information is compiled into a document, and everything that you ever put in there shows. We can't send that to Tallahassee. We have to make sure that it's clean. Your concentrations and tracks are different from what your general endorsement are. Again, depending on which one you choose under number 6, if you're renewal, or it'll be number 8 for new, and we'll look at that real quickly. But if you choose them, then these are things that are very different from your endorsement. It is not your program. It is, if you're in education, and you're going art ed. That's one concentration. You got that general endorsement education, and you're going into special education, or you're going into just general education overall. So think about your concentrations. Number 7, you have to spend a lot of time thinking about your scope and sequence. What is that? And what we've enjoyed seeing is you have created a Word document in laying out for us and made it as an additional attachment where you have shared, here's the scope and sequence when students enter. These are the courses they're going to take when they're in their second term, second semester, second year, whatever. You have all of that pretty much laid out. But what we're asking for here is a description, something clear. We think about, we are reading it so that we can understand it, but when our chancellor's offices and Commissioner of Education are reading this, we want them to be able to know that. They are all familiar with these because we're sending it to the entity that oversees you. However, we want it to be really clear that they understand what you plan on doing, whether it's a 1-year program, a 4-year, if there are different places students can exit and so forth. Now, this is an area that with each, because we're thinking about all of the sections we have here, it all relates to what we look at with the federal application that'll be a requirement after you become an approved program, that is also part of the Higher Education Opportunity Act, Comprehensive Transition and Post-Secondary Program, where you must have an integrated program, a program where students are included with our peers without disabilities. And so this section is critically important for you to think about. Whether they're auditing or they're non-degree programs, or they're in courses that has regular enrollment, we want to know their opportunity of working with students without disabilities. And so you will need to think about that as you look at all of these. And more important, what work experience programs and internships are included in your application. You cannot miss that. That is something that is critically important to include. And again, if any data is in here is just data for text, so you can see how it's filled in. But we do have programs that again, whatever students are in, it is credit bearing and it is with students without disabilities, and they are moving through. However, we want to make sure that you include what are those work-based learning opportunities to get that experience up. We know our career tech schools have that embedded in everything they do, so it might be a little different, but I'm going to close section 4, but this is the one that we spend a lot of time on if we want to go back and you have any questions.
Especially because it connects to the other components.
Oh my gosh, yes. This connects to everything.
To everything else that you use your program structure, it's connected to that. And it doesn't mean that it cannot be updated. And when we talked about the annual reports, you will see the opportunity to do the updates, but because the application is a starting point, that's what we want to make sure that is accurate.
Yes.
Whatever you list, whatever option you decide to go with, it is, and you have all the information in, because you will work with that information later in the FCSA community.
Okay. What's that? We'll go to section 5. Okay, remember, when we're thinking about that, partnerships are critically important. We can't do this in a silo. You're in your institution, but that institution connections with partners. Why do we need those partners? Job experience. Not only job experiences, employment after they finish your program. So in here, you're thinking about who are the partners that are going to help out during your program? Who are the partners that you can look at and provide employment once they've completed your program? So when you're thinking about the students coming in your program, you want to think about the connections that you have. And so many of our programs had a lot of that up front and had thought about that. And just because of your institution, you already have that. You have career centers. Your institution is responsible for all students kind of making connections after they graduate. So this is not unique to our programs. We want that information in there as well. So this part is important. If you haven't thought about those partners, begin to think about them and set up opportunities where students can get those experiential work during the program and after the program. I don't think I think each one of these is pretty clear, but if there's any information under employment opportunities, we haven't found this to be one of big concern, please ask the question. Performance indicators. Now, the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program Act has indicators in the law that we have to collect data from you as an approved program, but we also ask about how you will look at other indicators that maybe we haven't asked. And one of the first starting places is your satisfactory academic progress. We've seen that the majority of our institutions parallel their indicators of satisfactory academic progress with their institution, their host institution. And so they do that. But part of you looking at your FPCTP is if the students can meet satisfactory academic progress, just like any typical student, this program is not one of the programs for them. We asked you how to look at other ways you support your students and document that information about how you're going to provide them additional support along the way if they're not meeting it. Before they exit, we don't want students exiting because they didn't make satisfactory academic progress without you providing a lot of scaffold support. So while you may parallel your process with your institutions, what are those added components unique to the students with whom you're working that you will add to your program where our students can be successful? Even with students, typical students at your institutions, that's still a component where you are asked to support them. So no institution wants students entering the program and exiting the program without some elements of supporting it. So take time to think about how yours may be different from your institution. Excuse me. Along with that, if you have other indicators that you will also look at outside of what we ask, include those here. What are those indicators? And we come back at the end of your annual report to look for them. If you said them, we want to make sure that you are being accountable for them. Excuse me, I do have to take a drink of water. But if there's anything I'm leaving out there right now,
I don't think.
I don't think it's anything. Okay, now I'll close that section. And we'll look at program sustainability. We are so fortunate to have the financial support for students who are able to participate in your program, have $7,000 scholarships. Each and every one of them can have that available depending on your program cost. But we also want to know if you're a part of the institution, what is the institution doing to make sure that you stay for as long as the institution is there? If for some reason those scholarship funds are no longer available, as well as if for some reason the grant support for implementation of your program is minimized or is no longer available. What are your plans? And so is the plan to keep applying for the grant money that's available? Great, no problem. But what is the institution's commitment to your sustainability? And that's what this section is about. Have a 5-year plan. The initial process for this approval is 3. And like I said, we're in the example renewal application. What is the 5-year plan? Always down the line. How do you intend, your institution has made a commitment to keep it going? And so that's pretty much what this section is about, to think about how you will keep the program going. Other than, excuse me, the supports that we provide. I got a tickle that won't go away. And so bear with me, and most of you're used to it. This section is really important. We may love your application and everything is in it. And if you follow the process correctly, you have a team and higher administration is aware of it. But you must get institutional approval, documentation of institutional approval. And again, your institution must be aware that you must apply for the federal application. And so in this, we have to wait because we haven't moved. We're in our conference room. Thank you, Claudia. So in this section, you have an opportunity to look at this drop down and you can say you haven't submitted a CTP yet. I can't read that, but maybe it's approved.
It's, so if that's not been submitted,
Okay.
whether they're planning to submit it,
Okay,
or if the institution, so if that one says they have not submitted when they're planning to submit it, and the previous one, if they have submitted, they're just awaiting the decision and the days when they actually submitted, the CTP application.
okay, thank you. So with this, you have to do that and also follow the process of your accrediting body to inform them. Now, this is something that is important because the financial aid person will really help handle that CTP component. And what's important is you have to present your application, this FPCT application, to your approval body at your institution, whether it's the Board of Trustees or it's your school board. They have to get approval. They have to see what the application is, approve it, as well as the president or the superintendent. That documentation has to be part of it. And it has to, include the date of when that was approved. And that may have been under this, is it under this section that it mentions that?
Oh, the approvals is in section.
It's in section 10. Okay, so with this, and we'll look at that in a minute, but this is, we are going to apply for the federal application so that your students can be eligible for grants and opportunities. At the federal level, your financial aid person need to be on cue with you with that. And you'll have the opportunity to upload those documents. Okay. So section 9 is pretty much supplemental materials. As you think about supplemental materials, we've had several people who upload their application. They upload their recruitment process. Thank you. They might upload, we've had some create brochures, but they have shared additional resources that they want to make sure that are up there. Anything that's showing evidence that we have commitment on all sides of our institution, within our community, as well as within the institution.
Yeah, and I want to say about the format of the documents, because I think this is something that happened recently with one of the applications that we're looking at. So the format of the document is limited to PDF, Word documents, Excel files, PowerPoint, but Salesforce do not accept any web-based documents, like extensions, like you're downloading a website and you want to submit that that file, that it's a result of downloading that website. So it's restricted to documents like Excel files, which are tables, PowerPoint presentations, and you want to submit Word documents, and of course PDF. And there is no limit in the amount of documents that they can submit, or the size, how large they can be, which is good. But just to keep that in mind, because as Jen said, the final product of all this process is a PDF document that compiles and format all the information that you have provided. And for that reason, we have to make sure that all the files that you submit are in those different formats that I mentioned. So the system that goes along with Salesforce, which is the background for all this, can work and can compile your application together so we can send it to state.
Yeah. And we want to be real clear about the application because it's the foundation of everything. And we have to spend as much time in each other one, but if we get this right, then we're good. Okay, so you have an opportunity to upload there. Let's go to section 10. Again, you'll notice on this section that we are asking for, if you presented this to your board of trustees and your president, then we need that documentation. Okay, your president or representative have presented it to the board of trustees or the board of education. Then when did that happen? Who presented it? Who was responsible for that? So you have that information here of the date, and then we ask for evidence. That'll be one of those documents that you upload the letters, and we work with programs and making sure we see all of it. Can't move it forward if we don't have that. We can have everything. And so this is just an example of some of the other stuff. I do want to mention the additional documents. One of the things that the community colleges who have career programs or the technical colleges, the curriculum frameworks, sometimes they're pretty large. And so we do not submit all of that with your application. So we want to think about what are pieces that are critical that need to go. But if you have that link and to the curriculum framework that you might be referring, you could include hyperlinks or the web link in the application section. Section 4, when you're talking about your program or when you're doing a summary anywhere, the scope and sequence. If you want that in there, you can put it within the text, but the entire curriculum frameworks do not need to be part of the supplement. Like that. I think that was all I want to say. And I think we're gonna go over these submission processes real quick. Okay. And that's something that is important. So we're looking at what, slide 15? 16. And we're looking at the ways in which you determine if you want to send us information in your submission process. So if you look at the save button, a lot of times with the save button, you don't want to miss anything, leave off anything. So you just want to click the save button and that's it. You're not trying to send us anything, but you want to keep working.
Yeah, every time before the exit.
Yes, every time. And then, however, you've worked on it, we've given you feedback, and there's a comment section in each one of a comment area in each one of the sections that we provide feedback. And you want to submit it so you can get feedback, then you will submit it for draft review. And we want it to be a substantial amount that you've done since you saved it, and we give feedback and you've done that. So we'll do that. And so now you're ready for our feedback. Then we will take a look at it. We'll give it back to you. You might have updates that you need to review and go through that. We'll keep going back and forth until you are ready to submit it for approval. You've done all the corrections, we've talked through them, and now you're ready to submit for approval. And then we will take a look at it. If there's something that's still not right, we'll still send it back for updates before we send it to the DOE. And just as an example, this is just a final one that we're going to take a look at. And I've already showed the example of if you click on the icon, the main thing I wanted to show was it'll have final approval granted. And that will mean that everything has been done and we are sending a letter to your president and several other people at your institute.
Yeah, what I was gonna say regarding the actions that they're gonna find at the bottom is that with every time that you click, except for the time that you click on save, because that's only for you to have the application as a draft and keep working on it. You're going to receive an email notifying of the change in status. Same thing once the application is submitted, let's say for a draft review, and is revised by the center and there are changes to be made, then you will receive an email, a notification And again, that goes connected to why we need the contact information. So the accurate, the person that needs to receive the notification is the correct one. You're gonna receive an email that says your application needs updates or corrections. So you will go back into the community and you will look at those comment sections that Janice just mentioned, and you will work in each section based on those comments. So every step of the way goes with a notification email to keep track of what we're doing, and sometimes even remind you. The way that we have it set up is those timeframes that Janice described, they're all actually timed in the system. So when it's time for you, you receive the application back from FCSUA, you have 15 days that you're gonna be reminded. I think it's a week after you have received that notification, hey, your application is in updates needed. It's time for you to work on it and send it back to the center. And we also get reminded that it's time for us to give you feedback. So all those processes are built into the system to keep track and just get everything done on time.
There's also something written in the app, so we've already been told.
Exactly.
So we have an application sitting in queue, we have to respond, and we will within that time frame. Okay, that's that. The FPCTP grant we'll talk about this afternoon, but it is one on your dashboard if you look on your home page. And so we'll go into scholarships. We've had a lot of fun with scholarships.
Yeah.
And so we have, as you notice, we tried to work with each one of you to be explicit about your cost estimator, and that really depends on if you have several concentrations of tracks. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the academic year. That's always critically important. And we can tell who did it, and we have our actions, which will be some of the similar actions as we look at the status. If you're new to this process and you're just starting a brand new cost estimator, then you will click on new or refresh. What is that? Refresh?
Yeah.
Refresh.
Just make sure that everything else is on the screen. But yeah, new is for every year. Every year they have to go through the process.
Yes.
So
Never
every
skip
year
it.
new, and every year work on the process.
Yeah. So we have what we are sharing here is for those programs that have residential components and those who do not. And we have some programs that have students who live on campus, but not all your students. And so we've asked for a general name to be off-campus students. And this will work for students who are in that first option, and it's one unique uniform program and everybody goes through no other concentrations. And the cost for everything is the same in a time frame. And then this is off-campus estimators. So there will be a little difference in price. So let's just go here. And you'll notice that you have the cost estimator. And with each program we go through, this is a really important part to think about because you have to think about your year, because that's how we look at our funds, the scholarship. You think about your year, you've already thought about the length of your program. And this is after your program has become an approved program and you're ready to start enrolling students. But you'll have your cost estimator, which you'll spend everything depends on your cost estimator once you get into the scholarship. So your cost estimators are critically important for the rest of the tabs, the scholarship request, which will have the students who are participants who will, that information will pull from the scholarship estimator, and then a scholarship summary, which will show what has been dispersed to students over the period of time. And so as we look at this, some data has been pulled here. Is that?
Yeah, because in this case is Greenfield, and one that actually is pulling from the application is the program name. So that's why everything is connected. So the institution and the institution name and the program name, they're all pulling from the information that is already in the community. The contact information is one that is not, and that's actually done in that way on purpose, because maybe, as you know, we are currently offering 2 licenses per institution, but if someone else is the person in charge of working with the scholarship fees, we want to know who that person is to include that person in all the notifications and the process of revision and submission and approval of the scholarships to students.
That's very clear, because that really, we've seen that to be really different.
Just make sure that the person that is working on the cost estimators and the scholarship request is the one listed in that column to the right.
And in this case, you're thinking about what would the cost be for students who are off campus for whatever you offer. And it could, we have on campus and off campus cost estimators for different concentrations and tracks. It just depends. There is no limit, as Claudia says. There's no limit to the number of cost estimators. We just want the numbers to be accurate, and for auditing purposes, that we're tracking the students with the right amount of money and during the right term, so that your financial aid office can release the money appropriately. And so that's really important. And so as you see, with each cost estimator, you may be thinking about it's a 1 term, 2 terms, 1 term, 3 terms. How long will it last? And for each one of those, you will fill in the estimated cost of what it would typically cost for institution fees, tuition and fees, or institution fee. Tuition and fees that will be typical for many students who are entering your program, entering any program at your institution. But then if you have some fees that are unique and that you want all students to pay once they enter your program. And so you look at these areas here that might be some additional fees, and we usually talk about those, that what does it cost? What will you pull from your student scholarship to pay your institution for them taking courses? This is not, for our universities and our state colleges, we cannot have a special program cost that is not covered in the legislation for that to happen. However, you may find that you have unique costs with mentoring or job coach, or you want everyone to have a food plan rather than on or off campus. Those are things that are legitimately charged by your institution. We even have transportation that a lot of institutions have included because your programs are widespread. This is where it goes here. The nice thing about our cost estimator, it adds up all of your fees. It adds up everything as it goes. And so we could look at what those calculations are. You don't have to enter those. There should be no numbers in here that for addition that are calculated that you have to worry about. As you complete the cost estimator, all of that will feed in and determine as you go over to the scholarship request. This is when you're saying we have so many students identified with those costs.
And I want to mention, Janice, something that you're going to see across the platform is as you were seeing in the cost estimator, there are comments areas everywhere for you to add additional information. Anything that you think that we need to know when we are revising and approving the cost estimator, please put it in there. Same thing you're gonna see when you're working individually on your scholarship request for your students. There is gonna be a comment section in there for you to, if something is specific to that student that we need to consider when we're revising and approving the scholarship, that's the place where you will have that information in. And also for you to keep track of what's going on. Maybe if you have 2 or 3 students, it's easy, but when the program starts growing, that's a good place to keep track of what's happening with that specific student and have those notes in the system.
One thing we keep in mind, and you probably heard if you've been with us a while, Drew talks about how unique all of our programs are. That's how unique all your students are too. So when we've seen that with these cost estimators, the unique ways in which you're supporting them is phenomenal. And so we might have comments, you might have comments, but when you put them in here, it's a great way for us to track and understand. If I come back and ask, and Ashley Bickham spends a lot of time working with programs in this area. So she might come back and ask me a question that she sees that you've made a comment on. And we have to clarify what is that and talk through it. So the more comments you can use to clarify, the better. You'll see in this example, this student is only going for the summer. And we have programs like Broward College. Broward College started all their students in the summer for a short period of time. Well, that's the cost estimated for the end. It was for the end of last academic year. And so that's fine. For this student, it is determined that that student will only attend summer term. For other students, they may attend other terms. And so that will make a difference on what goes over, what feels automatically over here about what their costs will be. Now, you don't put anything here. We determine after we look at your estimates of what it costs and what terms the students are attending, that we make a decision about how their awards, we know that they have up to $7,000, but we determine how much they would get for each one of those terms in the overall award. And let's say if you already know attending your institution for one term is $15,000, well, there goes that $7,000. We just distribute the amount across the term. We distribute the amount across the term. And then one thing that you have to do, you have to return after you have dispersed the money and indicate that the money is dispersed. You want to mention that, Claudia?
Yeah, and that's when you're going to start seeing the disbursement. Maybe this one is a little bit different because it's an example and we were just playing a little bit with the enrollment. But based on what you check to the left is what you're gonna see on your right home every time. If you, as Jess was saying, if you say the students only going to attend to the summer term, that's the amount awarded that you're gonna see done by us. And then you're gonna see another field that is gonna be the dispersed for that same term. So when it's the time of the year, and that is some reminders that we set up, you're gonna start receiving an email that tells you it's time to do this summer disbursement report for that student because that student attended the summer term. So when you log them into the community, then you're gonna see that that field is gonna be available to you to enter the amount that was actually dispersed to the student. And something that I always say, you don't have to submit the request back to us. It's only save the information because the request has been already submitted and approved when we did the award process. So it's just a matter of entering. Once you get those reminders, or even if you know ahead of time that the amount that was dispersed, just make sure that you go in, you enter the amount, and you save the scholarship request.
Yeah, because the nice thing about it is, again, it calculates it for each one and provides that in the summary. If you have several students who are on the same scholarship estimator, this is where you enter a new student. If it's a returning student, then you'll be able to find that student in here.
And I was actually gonna point out something about that. And we have a graphic in the slides that actually explain the connection. We want to make sure that the students that you are requesting a scholarship for makes sense based on your data, the data that you put into the system. So as Janice was saying, if you have a new student, then you actually click a new student, you add the student name and the student ID. But if it's a returning student, it's a continuing student, for sure, previous year, you requested a scholarship for this student, but you also worked on it annual report or student information for that student. If you indicated last year that student is going to continue this year, that student's name is gonna come up when you search. Instead of saying my name in there, you can type the student name and it will come up. So it will help you to remember. So this is the students that you have available. So Canada does the work for you, making sure that the information is accurate. And the other good thing is that I said that last year, Janice was a student and exited the program, and completed the program. So this year, when you come back to your scholarship space here in the community, and you try to work on your scholarship request, Janice's name is not gonna come up because she already graduated. So it helps you to actually do it correctly, do it accurate. Just try make less mistakes.
What we've learned is some of you have provided additional opportunities where a student has completed everything that you offer. and you are not ready to exit that student. And so you kind of, what has been good is you've gotten in touch with us first saying, this student has shown phenomenal progress, and now we want them to take advantage of something else. Now they've completed everything. Do we exit them? No, do not exit them, because if you do, they won't show up again. And so if you have students who are progressing that well or doing things and you want to offer new opportunities, please let us know before you exit them from your program. And then the summary. The summary gives you a total of all the money that you have, how much you disperse, how much you owe back to us at the end of the year.
Which you will get an email
You will get
when it's time, telling
Yeah.
you it's time to return if you have funds left.
And with your help, we had some glitches last year because we didn't have all of this information accurate, depending on where you were and when you entered your information. And we've cleaned that up. And so this will tell you how many students are in fall, spring, summer, how much money you disperse each term. So this is a nice one to kind of help you do a checks and balances to make sure everything is okay. That connection, though, is critically important with the annual report. The non-dispersed funds that's a check that you send back to our institution. And again, you don't have to do any calculations. They'll have it. It'll already be there. Okay.
I didn't see any questions in the chat, but if
Okay.
you have any questions, just please type it in the chat and we'll make sure to respond.
If you look on slide, I think 24 of the handouts, you'll see those reminders. Claudia's made a great calendar with the reminder dates that you will certainly get information about. If you have any questions about that, let us know. We'll move on to the annual report, which is fresh in your mind because you just finished it. And we'll look at the program information, the student information, and the student follow-ups. So as we look at the program information, we have to say one of the key things that is critically important is this has to be done first. This, when you start on your annual reports, must be done first before you can get into doing your student information. You cannot move forward. And what we learned from thanking all of you from what you've done this year is it is best for the program information to be complete. And then once you know it's all cleaned up, then you can start entering your student. Now, if you did a report before, you can clone last year. And we had cheers this year as you were submitting your stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, can I just clone last year? So that's why everything is so important to be clean from your previous report, from a next, and from the application, from, oh my gosh, everything, scholarships. So you can clone the previous year, but if you are brand new and have never done an annual report, or your institution has never done an annual report, then you have to click new. And then that means you'll begin entering data. But once you have started an annual report, submitted an annual report, cloning is the way from then on. And so you'll notice again, we do give feedback. And as you submit your annual reports, we do tell you, we go through, we make comments of information that we don't recognize and need clarification on, because we use all of this for our annual report. You'll have the different statuses that tell you whether you need to do updates. And if you say, then you just have it in draft and you're working, we look at it because we look at all of them. And if it's just draft, you're saying, leave it alone. We sometimes remind you though, that you have it in draft and you've asked for feedback. We didn't do anything because you didn't submit it. So if you don't submit it, we do not touch it because we believe you are working on it. And then the final approval. And then once you get that, that is moving on to, you can begin entering your students. And why that's important is when we start thinking about that, a lot of your data is going to pull from either your previous annual report, or it's going to pull from the program application.
If it's a first year that they're that the institution is working on it.
Yeah, if it's the first year. And so again, that data pulls through, and we ask that you go through and click every single box, check everything, because before we approve it, we are checking every box. We're checking all of the data. We're going back. And so when we see a conflict, while it's something we can probably easily change, we don't want to second guess you. And so we want to make sure that you have that in there. You see this CTP is asking, do you have your approval? We don't need the application again. We just need to know, have you gotten the approval? And we should have received your application if you've done that. The staffing, with your help, we worked out staffing. We did notice that a lot of you, your institution has made a lot of commitment in providing personnel to support you. You forgot to include a lot of that information here. So we had to go back to the staffing, particularly down here. And that's what ties back to your grant. Excuse me. If you have people working on from the grant being paid, and it asks you who's being funded by the grant, you already have that in your budget. We need to see those hours. We need to know who those individuals are, because in your grant, you wouldn't necessarily have everyone's name, and things change over time. So we noticed that was something that we had to go back to several of you to ask. And we'll go back over this before the time again, but we noticed that was one that we had to review. So didn't have much there. The external providers are extremely helpful in us looking at what other supports are in place that helps with sustainability. And a lot of it you probably addressed in your grant that were going to be part of it. But this is the baby right here. Just like Claudia mentioned in the application, section 4. Section 4 has to be right. This is everything, people. This is what we share with the rest of our larger community of the number of credentials. We have over 300 something credentials that our 19 FPCTPs are offering. They're not all unique to each institution, but we have a lot that our students have access to. But we need to know, this is in bold. What is different from what you maybe already had in your application or what you did in your previous annual report? What is new? Not what is new? And so you are adding to your credentials. This is one of the areas we had a little trouble with in clarification, and I think it'll be better this year. You all worked with us and gave us information, and so we're happy about that. Again, anything that is new, that was different, that you didn't have, that are micro credentials.
Or maybe something that they're not offering anymore for some reason. So think about this as the most accurate place where you're gonna have your information, not only for us, but also for you. If you want a reference from the program structure, make sure that the annual report is always gonna be your point of reference as we're gonna look at the program. So make sure that what you have in section 4 is what your program is offering to your students.
And those credentials, we know, and we probably will be reaching out to almost every institution to make sure that we are cleaning up everything that's in the FCSUA community, from your latest application to your annual report. So someone within our staff will be reaching out to you, because we're going to make sure that whatever we learned from your support and feedback during this process, that we have it cleaned up as much as we can as you begin it next year. And making sure that the credentials are lined up and nothing is missing. The best is your recruitment. We do need to know that, how that, we'd like to advertise that because people ask. And I don't think, the other part was we got in touch with you a lot about the enrollment of this year. That tied back to your scholarships. We went back and looked at your scholarships. If there was something not adding up, we asked you, what do we need to do as we get those numbers correct? And you worked with us very well on that. Trying to see if there's anything in here. Anticipation, some of it you, in your application, you would have already written what you projected over the next few years. So this is coming back and you've had a year of doing your work. What do you think? What do you think now? And where's your recruitment pool? And projections. The program information is pretty short, and so that's why we want to make sure it's most accurate. And then once it's most accurate, then we can go into our student reports.
Yes, can you open the one that is in the draft?
Yes.
But instead of doing a view, can you do the yeah, and so they can see the options to submit at the bottom.
Yes.
So it's very similar to what we have in the grants, to what we have in the application, but just make sure, and it is also in the slides, just make sure that wherever you're entering, and this connects to what Janice was saying about that, we make sure that all the information is in. So we're not having those fields required because we allow you to work on your annual report. As soon as you want to work on it, there's no limit when you want to start, but you have the availability to start working maybe on section 1. And if you're done with section 1 and you don't have more time, you can come here and save it so you don't lose your information. But that you need to make sure that you are doing before you exit the FCSUA community. So then you keep working on the other sections, and when you're ready, you submit. Again, all these actions are tied to notifications. So they behave in the same way that we describe on the application. All the process is the same. We try to be consistent across all the components in the community.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the reminders.
Yes.
I think that is also something key to mention. You start going to receive reminders 90 days out of the due date. Then you will start, and that will go once a month. Then after 60 days, we will start every week to remind you that it's time to start working on your annual report. But it doesn't mean that if you want to start working in your 21-22 right now, you can do it.
Yeah.
So there's no limit. You don't have to wait for the emails to start coming in.
Yeah, you
You
can
can
start
start.
right now. And if it's anything, so some information will be pretty stable, but we know that over the last year and a half, that there were some instability and personnel changed and everything. But there are some of you who didn't have that change, and so you can start right now. Start right now. You're going to get the reminders later if it's not submitted. And it may be that as you get closer to the time, you want to start at that time, but we are not holding you back from doing it. The sooner you have your application approval status, knowing that it's pretty much set, then that's when you will get access to do your student information. And some of you know that as well. And so you don't have to wait for the deadline. Okay, as we look at student information, wow, we found that, thank you, Claudia. We found that this component, so many of you thanked her for that, working and making sure this was in our communication back and forth with that works really well, because this is why we're here, right? And so we want to document everything about our students as well as we can. Again, when we're working in our student information, the information pulls from, if you had a student previously, you can clone that student, you can choose new students, and some of that information comes in. We even had to go back for new students and ask you about their birthdays because you forgot to put that. So you want to check everything,
And I think the important piece in there is so how everything is connected. And when we're referring to the scholarship, so when you start working on your students and you have students that you requested scholarships for them, you're gonna see their names coming up when you click and select students. So you're gonna see in there. So it's gonna tell you if you requested a scholarship for this student, you have to report in that student. You're also gonna have the option to clone, as Janice was saying, if it's a student that is continuing from previous year, until you exit the student, if you complete section 3. And you also are gonna have the option to add new students that, or maybe students are part of the program, but for some reason they didn't have access to the scholarship. You also have to report on them as Fpctp students. So all those connections are already established in there. So just take advantage of that and look at what you see when you click on those select students, select student lists, making sure that you have covered everything, and depending on your cases, if it's a student new because it got scholarship for the first time, or if you can take advantage of the cloning function because it's a returning student.
I do want to say, you notice that we asked, and this is for those of you who are veterans, we did ask repeated information before students, information about students before they came into your program, information about the students while they were in your program, and then information about your students if you get to section 3 when they exit your program. You'll see now in your report that we document that data. We document, we're trying to look at, and we want to be able to look at the factors that impact success of our students. What was happening before they came to us, what happened during the time they participated in our programs, and what has happened after. So I want to say before I forget, if you have students who are exiting your program, think about your exit interview. If you didn't think about it before, and have it written down somewhere so that if a person comes in behind you, and those of you who were new to this and had to pick up from others who were prior, and you didn't have all that information, I know you can appreciate this. What is your exit interview? Because you need to collect a lot of data on the students. You will follow those students for 5 years after they complete the program. And we'll look at section 3 so that you can really be prepared to ask them, know what they're going to do after they leave. And so when we do the follow-up information, but as you look at these, the concentrations and tracks, you would pick on whichever credential they were in. You would indicate whether they are enrolled or not. You've just gone through this, I know it's fresh, but for each one of the concentrations and tracks, you tell what their status is. And so as you're looking at what is happening this academic year, that's it. That's all we want to know. What is happening during this year? We have the industry clusters here where you do have to choose which one. You need to do that 3 times if they're exiting. What were their interests prior to entering? What did they actually get in? What's in the program, and what did they exit? What did they do? So we ask, you have your drop down menus. Again, this is where I'm in view. Like this is again where if you choose yes on any of these and change your mind to no, your data will be there, and we have to ask you to go back and clean it up. I think I'm going to go over the part where we had the biggest concern, and that was this section. Remember to do this section. That's really all I have to say. And as we get closer to the time, we'll do another reminder or send you the video of what we went over last year, a reminder webinar, so we can ask questions when it's more relevant. But click each and every one of these, respond, please. Every one of these, we need a response. So remember to do that. And then as you respond here, you will have a total here. And again, industry areas in which we ask, and you didn't have much problem here. What we love is those who provided additional information. That gave a rich story. If you had any clarification that you wanted to share, it helps us tell better stories. It helps you tell better stories and paint a better picture of what students actually did throughout the year and the support you provided. And this is section 3. Well, I say, please know what is asked in section 3 so you can be ready to answer that for students. And that's it, particularly for the follow-up, where they're going, what kind of work they're going to be in, are they going to be employed? What are their plans after they have left your program? Excuse me. Because when you do the 5-year follow-up, you want to kind of backtrack and see, this is what you thought you were going to do when you exited the program. Where are you now? Any explanation that you can provide is very helpful. please provide explanation. And we thank those of you who do a really good job on that. So critically important is the student follow-up. Did I miss anything on the student information you might want me to go back to?
The only thing is that in the students, you can actually submit multiple reports
Oh, yeah.
at the time.
Yes.
So if you want to work on all your students, and once you say that's complete, you will see that the select column to the left, it's going to be active for you to submit all at the same time. So you can check, or if you're done with 10 students and you want to submit those 10 students for us to start taking a look, and then you continue working on an older group, you do that. So you don't have to do it one by one, and you get an email, a notification that tells you you have submitted all these students, and you get a list. And we also get a list of the students that you have submitted, or when we have approved, it's also done in the same way. So it's not a lot of emails, because maybe if you have a lot of students, it's gonna be a lot going on your inbox. So that's why we concentrate that process into one, so you can have multiple students submitted, and we can approve multiple students at the same time.
And you can look at students, you can look at information. We learned that for those programs that have been around a while, it's going to be probably important that you go by academic year.
Yeah.
Because you want to pay attention to which one of those years that you are submitting, particularly if you're submitting a group of them. And we have programs with 30 or more students, and they'll have all of those student information forms. If you're trying to submit all of them at one time, which we do ask that you submit them in bulk, it makes more sense. Pay attention to the academic year, can be arranged in that way. If we want to just see all of them in the same year. Okay. We have, for many of our presentations, and we share information about our programs, people ask, what are our students doing? And so you know how important this is, and that also gives you more bank as you talk and share with your, as you recruit and share with your other colleagues within the institution. You want to be able to brag about what's happening with those students. And so this follow-up information, that's why I say have your exit information clear, your exit interview. No, when you have that contact information, it's great to know from the student, have some other layers of, do you have the parent information? Do you have another close relative or guardian? Who do you have providing you feedback? And then that's what we rely on as we look at your follow-up information. So have that available. But one part that we had to go back and ask a lot is, were they in competitive employment? How much were they earning? And then you had to go back and do that. And so you want to know, you can go take a peek look at what's asked in the follow-up information. So that those are questions that you will have as part of your exit interview. And as you prepare for year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as you follow up with the student and maybe a relative or whatever, to kind of know what else do we need from that student. Now, with the follow-up information, Claudia, this isn't one that can be cloned, is it?
Yes, and actually that was something I want to mention, and something we saw that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have follow-up reports from previous year, you're going to be able to clone those reports. You only have to make sure that you revise the information and you have what you have, and you submit for the current year. It's accurate and it corresponds to the year that you're reporting on. One thing to keep in mind is a select student. It's in the year are very important when you're working on it. Let's say that is the first time that you're going to do a follow-up report. It means that if you go back to the list of your students' follow-up reports, you're not going to see the name in there because there's nothing to clone for. Where are you going to find that student? When you click new, because it's going to be the first time. You click new, you enter the reporting academic year, and when you click on select student, if you said last year on that student annual report that the student exited the program and completed the program, we want to follow up on that student.
Yeah.
It means that that name is going to come up when you select a student, but you have to remember, you have students that you're going to take advantage of the clone functionality, but there are others that you have to start their first report because it's the first time that you're doing the report on them. So after the first year, of course, you can clone them, but the first year you have to make sure that you click new and you then select that student's name. The good thing is that because everything is connected, you don't have to remember. The student's name is gonna be there if you're gonna look the student's name up.
I'm really hoping that you are in your FCSJ community and following along and trying to become familiar with where things are. We'll repeat and share and go over it as much as possible, but we want you to ask questions so that we can clarify, because we know this stuff and we think it's pretty clear to us, but it may not be clear to you. And so if you're in your FCSJ community and you're looking at functions and you see you can't do something or you don't understand a drop down, or please, this is the time to do it. Again, if there's any additional clarification you can share about students, that helps tell the story. But you're going to have to do this for 5 years. And we didn't have much trouble with this. We did have trouble with people knowing that they had not done the follow-ups.
Right. It was specifically that case that I was describing, that it was the ones that they were only doing were the ones that had a previous reports that they were only cloning. That's what I want to mention. Please go and check the ones that you have available. If it's the first time, there's not going to be a previous record to clone. So you have to create the first follow-up.
And what we did with our veteran programs, because we haven't always been in the FCSUA community, we went back to all of their previous information and they were able to update. So all of our completers are in here now. So we shouldn't have to worry about any student being missed if you know that they finished the program. Again, everything is connected. If you exited them, then we're looking for follow-up data. If you did not exit them, then they will not be in the follow-up information. And on top of that, FCSUA keeps it in here for 5 years, following up after the time of completion.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say is we keep improving. It doesn't mean that the forms are not going to change, or we're not going to find a way to improve them. We already have things that we want to make better. But if you find anything, and we have received feedback from you telling me, hey, I think this can be, worked in this way, or I have this problem, what can I do? So we really appreciate that. So let us know, because even that we tested, that we played with the system, it's only us, and we made this for you. So we want to hear what's going on with the FCSUA community. It's new to all of us. So we definitely appreciate and want your feedback.
And we particularly appreciate those of you who let us sample with you.
Yes.
So you let us sample with you, and that's what helped catch a lot of the glitches. So I know the colleagues who got in and thought it was wonderful, you made it happen for us. And so we're going to continue to make sure we do that as we go through. You'll have stuff that you say, you know what? Yeah. If you do that, and if it's in our ability, we will certainly make the change. Then you have the contact us. Many of you have done a great job of getting connected with us via the FCSUA email or emailing us personally. But this is also another way. If you're in the FCSUA community, well, you can reach out to us and we can go in and respond to you right away. Think of anything that we might be missing.
Are there any questions? Anything?
Again, I hope you were clicking through. I'm also hoping and trusting that you have updated your contact information and have thought about the individuals who will need licenses.
Yes.
Yeah. And so for those individuals who need licenses, that you have gotten their information, and so that we can make sure that everybody, particularly by February 22nd, will have be able to do that multi-authentication.